You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good, and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan. Kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Today, we're going to have this wonderful conversation with Camille Helminski, who is going to help us understand Mary and in the fullness of her being. And by way of introduction, Camille is a co-director of the Threshold Society, and she has written so many books that have influenced my own life. Women in Sufism, A Hidden Treasure, Rumi and His Friends, The Light of Dawn, Daily Readings from the Holy Quran. Camille has authored the most recent book, The Way of Mary. Literally, it's like an encyclopedia of Mary. Camille, I think that you were not born in Islam, right? Mary was even part of your upbringing. And so I'd like to know, is that something from your life that inspired you to write The Way of Mary?
Well, first, thank you for having me with you this moment, Daisy, and for the friends who are listening. Mary, beloved Mary, has always been with me. And, as a young girl growing up in Florida with what was then one might consider interfaith, half Baptist, half Episcopalian. There is just so much beauty, in the Quran that relates the story of Mary and in parallel with the Christian tradition, and which may be surprising for many people who aren't aware of that.
We feel like we need to bring these luminary figures that changed human history back into the consciousness of people. So was there anything striking that you found between the Quran and the Bible in the story of Mary?
Really, so very much the way she is honored. There's a whole chapter in the Quran named for Mary, Maryam, and she's mentioned numerous times in the Quran, much more than she is in the Bible.
This is the season of Christmas, and we are celebrating the birth of Jesus and Mary giving birth. But I'd like to start from even before that. I know that her story goes way before to her mother, who could not have a child, and she was beseeching God.
It's really so poignant because we're aware of so many women nowadays who are struggling to give birth and to conceive a child. And her mother and father had, been very devoted and one might say, pillars of the Jewish community, and yet had not been given offspring. And they were both yearning for that fulfillment. And so the story is that her mother, Hannah, was in her garden and her husband, Joachim, had gone out to the desert. And so he is pouring out his heart to his Lord in that vastness and solitude of the desert. And his wife is in the garden and she looks up in a tree and sees a nest, as some say it was a sparrow in a laurel tree, and just pours her heart out to God, saying, the lowly, this beautiful bird is given offspring, and yet I'm left longing. And then the tradition is that angels came to both of them. You will bear a child.
Right.
And so this was the being that became Mary, but at first they had thought that it would be a boy, but her mother had made the promise to dedicate her to the temple. When she was born, it was a girl.
She decides that she has to dedicate the daughter to the temple. Mary's been raised to go into the temple. The temple here is a synagogue, right? It's the Jewish faith.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that was one of the beauties of making this journey with her story, was finding out more about the Jewish faith, which I had not been as familiar with.
So then Mary is called Mary. So I know that there are many variations of Mary. We Muslims call her Maryam. The Jews call her Miriam. And she's given so many names. Can you just describe what this name means?
And it has that sense of the grace, the star of the sea, the pouring of the sea of love.
The mistress of the sea, right?
Yes, Yes, and that star of guidance. There's so many blended meanings. Even goes back to Egyptian roots,
Mhm.
the one who is beloved of God or loving of God. That root of love is there also. That, the sea of beneficence.
How old is she when they take her to the temple? Basically, they're leaving their daughter in the
Yes,
custodianship of the temple, right?
yes. It was said around the age of 3,
Oh,
and that
wow, that young.
yeah, yeah. As soon as she was able to, manage somewhat on her own, and
Right,
that she was then put under the guardianship
right.
of Zachariah.
So tell us the story of Zachariah. His wife doesn't have a child.
Yes, Zachariah, became her protector and guardian, and he would visit her in the sanctuary. And then it's said that he would find her already provided with food when he would be going to take food to her.
Yeah. Where was the food coming from?
In the Quran, there's a beautiful passage where he says, "But Mary, from where did this come to you?"
Yeah.
And she said, "See how my Lord provides for whom he will beyond all reckoning."
Wow. So the
And
food was being brought to her by angels.
yes,
And apparently
yeah,
the food was out of season.
yes, summer fruit in winter, winter, nourishment in the summer, the coolness. And so in witnessing, the depth of her prayer, Zachariah, is moved to also make this prayer again
Mm.
for righteous offspring.
Zachariah is helping her to bring Jesus into this life. And Zachariah is also getting prepared to bring John the Baptist, who will anoint Jesus. You also mentioned the Ark of the Covenant.
The beautiful tradition of the Ark of the Covenant, holding the covenant with Moses, with
Yeah.
God from Mount
Yeah.
Sinai. And then there's also a tradition that it was carried later by the son of Solomon and Sheba to Abyssinia
Mm.
and held there. A deeper sense of the Ark of the Covenant in the awareness that in our own bodies, it's like an ark carrying the
Mm.
covenant of God. Mary
Mm.
was also that.
So while she's in the sanctuary now, this is when she gets the special visitations from the angels. And so what happens?
In both the Christian and the
The
Islamic
Muslim.
tradition,
Mhm.
there is the awareness of the spirit of holiness, that breath of God coming in the form of an angel to speak to her and give her the news of the bearing of a child, of a holy son. And at first she, of course, would be trembling, at the
Yeah.
appearance of this angel that appears in the form of a beautiful, handsome man.
So she
And
thought that she might get attacked by the man.
she should
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
refuge in
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
Lord,
Yeah.
and for this person to be conscious of God,
Yeah.
um, and yet the word is told, for her to be tranquil in the beauty of this blessing that is coming
Mhm.
to her. And
Mm.
so she says, may I be the willing handmaiden of God.
She obviously accepts God's will because she knows that the workings of the Spirit are going to be coming through her. I mean, imagine what you'll have to deal with outside and the taunts, but she's ready for it because she knows something miraculous is about to happen.
It's impossible to
Mm.
say, and yet there is the way in which she has been prepared through her upbringing in the temple, through the stories of the tradition of the miraculousness,
Mhm.
through the sustenance of God being
Mhm.
poured through. And so she would just trust in that unfolding.
Okay, so now Mary's about to give birth. So if you could just take us through that of what actually happens and how it maybe differentiates from the Christian tradition.
Yes, there's such a beautiful passage within Surah Maryam
Mm.
itself that describes the birthing, and it's slightly different from the Christian um, moment within the stable that's often related,
Mhm.
or in a cave, as sometimes is said. In the Quranic tradition, it's Mary again out, on her own by a palm tree.
Mm.
And this, maybe I can just share with you a little bit of the verse. As we say, in the name of God, the
Yeah,
infinitely
yes.
compassionate, infinitely merciful. and the throes of childbirth drove her to the trunk of a palm tree. She cried out, "Oh, would that I had died before this and been a thing utterly forgotten." Then calling out from below her, she heard, "Grieve not. Your sustainer has provided a stream beneath you, and shake the trunk of the palm tree towards you. It will let fall fresh, ripe dates upon you. So eat and drink and cool your eyes with tranquility."
So now she's given birth, and the child is already been named by God, right? In the Islamic tradition, we call him Isa, but in the Christian tradition, he's called Jesus. What does that mean exactly? Lord saves, or
Yes, or he saves.
so the Messiah, yeah.
Yes.
And he is not born of an earthly father, and because he doesn't have one. And the Quran actually refers to him as son of Mary.
Yes, Son of Mary, and also Word of Truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to make a distinction between the son of Mary versus Jesus's mother. She was a solo parent, and that's why he's being called the son of Mary. Because, people were referred to as son of the father, because these were patriarchal societies.
There's awareness of the mother
Yeah.
and her strength,
Mhm.
in being. And she was gifted with the support of Joseph,
Yeah.
but she surely would have been, raising him with deep spirit, even as she had been raised, and observing the prayers. And she was his teacher in
Yeah.
his early years.
Yeah. So in the Christian tradition, there is a figure called Joseph who helps her, who comes to her aid, who acts like her husband. And but in the Islamic tradition, there is no Joseph. Did he have a family? Did he have children? Because it looks like there's some differences there as well between the Christian and Muslim traditions.
There's a bit more about him in the Christian tradition. There is this sense within the Islamic tradition of, their journey to Egypt after his birth to try to keep him safe. There's the understanding of Joseph having dreams also. He was, it is told in the traditions that he was of the lineage of David, and that is why they had to go from Nazareth to Bethlehem, because they had to return to the city of David. And Mary was also from the lineage of Aaron, who was of the priestly class, and of course, the brother of Moses and of Miriam. I just love all of these interweavings.
Yeah. So Jesus has all of these lineages. Jesus
Mhm.
is coming into the world carrying these enormous prophetic lineages of these biblical traditions. So now she's got this little baby in her arms, and is she going to present it to the temple? What happens while she's doing the presenting?
Tradition for a new mother to hold a child close for 40 days. And this is still recognized in many places. And so there would be a moment, to bring the baby for blessing.
Mhm.
There's the question of how did he arrive? It's related in the Quran because it speaks about Jesus speaking from the cradle, that this was his first miracle.
Miracle. Yeah.
And, that it was due to Mary's beauty and her spiritual depth that he is called forth to speak on her behalf. As it said in the Quran, she vows a fast of
Mhm.
words. She won't speak, but points to her child. And the people say, well, how can we ask a baby,
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and yet he comes forth and speaks so beautifully, and about his role as one who is bringing, the word of God, and how he is blessed in the moment that he was born and as he lives and when he is raised up.
So it looks like they were able to convince some people. And there is a story from the Christian tradition that there were these three men who brought some gifts to the wise men. Can you expand on that a little bit? Who were these wise men and what did they bring?
Well, the remembrance of the beautiful gifts are gold, frankincense, and myrrh. All very healing substances, very pure substances, antibacterial, anti-carcinogenic. They have all these benefits, and it also just points to the meanings of those, the trueness of gold, our character also
Mm,
be
mm,
like gold,
mm.
and
Okay.
fragrant and blessing like frankincense,
Wow.
etc.
So now, if we could fast forward a little bit, they had to flee because Herod was after them. So how long were they gone? It's not clear to me, especially it's not in the Islamic tradition. So I'm trying to fill the gaps from the Christian tradition.
There are many mysteries as regard time and pieces. It's said that they were in Egypt for quite some time, and again, as they're traveling, another spring opens in Mataria, still a place honored by both Christian and Muslim traditions, and they were surely supported by many as they were journeying. And it may not be until he's a teenager almost that they return. But Joseph has a dream
Mm,
again and is told it's safe now, you can return. So
mhm,
they do, and they resume their life. And um, Jesus is brought up, it's understood within the traditions, and going to the temple 3 times a
mhm.
week, all of these Jewish traditions he would have been very familiar with.
So he's now in Nazareth, right? So Nazareth is the place that they would return to because that's Joseph's home. And so Jesus is helping him with the carpentry. That's how he becomes a carpenter, right? And he's going to the synagogue. And is Mary involved in teaching him because she's so devout in prayer? Is she teaching him that tradition as well?
One would reflect that this would be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then at some point, they travel to the temple in Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. And they traveled in a caravan and he was lost.
The story is that they had, come, as you say, for the special holidays, for the Passover, and um, that then Mary and Joseph and Jesus had joined the caravan, to return home. But then suddenly they didn't see Jesus anymore. He was supposedly 12 by then, which
Mm,
is really an age of maturity at that time for a son.
yeah.
So they went back and were hunting, it said, for 3 days. And then finally came back to the temple and discovered him there, engaged in conversation with the rabbis, and just very deeply speaking together. And Jesus, says to Mary, well, why wouldn't you realize where I would be?
There's a kind of gap as like specific moments, what's happening between the 12 and he then emerges at the age of 30 and he begins public as preaching and trying to topple the tyranny. And his what happened during that ministry? Obviously, she knew that he had a mission. He was born to do something great. What was her role during that time?
And so there is this long gap of 18 years. Some say maybe he was out in the desert with the Essenes. We don't have any documentation. There has been an oral tradition for many for centuries, and some pieces along the way are recorded. Um, so this moment of the wedding at Cana is such a beautiful example of their relationship. She is realizing that there isn't enough wine,
Mhm,
and so she calls Jesus to be of help, and he's reluctant at first.
mhm,
It doesn't feel it's the time for him to come forth, and that she just says to the person who's helping with the wine, just do whatever he tells you to do.
mhm.
So she trusts completely in his being, in um, this capacity of
The
spirit.
spiritual gifts, yeah, spiritual gifts.
So, yeah, it's just, and that it's a wedding,
Mhm,
this moment of male and female coming together. It's she and Jesus also assisting for the pouring of the wine,
mhm.
and the sense that wine is also spoken of, not just as the earthly wine of grapes, but the wine of love.
So then he has a miracle that he produces this, the wine just comes out of nowhere, right? This wine
There-
that was running out.
They take 6 jugs, or, probably clay big jars of water, and they become wine.
She knew things about him that she probably didn't want to disclose too much because, what would be the consequences of him going public? And so she was keeping certain things to herself. But then along the way, there were all these other women that he was surrounded by as well, that were helping him with his mission. And, women like Mary Magdalene. And can you tell a little story about Mary Magdalene and the seven demons, and was she possessed, or was she just a woman? I'm just trying to understand the role that women are playing around Jesus. Mhm.
So there are various versions of the story of Mary Magdalene, but there was a sense, even in the Islamic tradition, she's spoken of as someone who had an illness and was in need of healing, and she had such faith that she touched Jesus's cloak and was healed. And he sensed that. But also in speaking of, in the Christian tradition, sometimes it's spoken of as seven demons being expelled from her. Surely she was one of those most devoted,
Mhm.
and later is spoken of as the apostle to the apostles. And there was a time when one of the popes linked her, with someone, who was,
A fallen woman, right?
yes, and that was centuries ago, and there was no real basis for
Mhm.
saying that. But
Mhm.
it wasn't until 1969 that the Pope then rescinded that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
said, well, actually, there's no scriptural basis for that.
I find that shocking because she was the first one who saw Jesus resurrected.
Yes,
And she
yes,
was the one who told everybody, he's
yes.
alive, he's ascended to heaven, And then she had
He
to
was given
convince
the
the
task
apostles.
of calling.
Before he ascended, he could have gone to James, he could have gone to any one of the male apostles. And
Yeah,
then the
beautiful.
Pope then calls her a
Acting
fallen woman.
that's
How is that
uplifted.
possible?
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful that the women are so woven in.
This notion that women are somehow sidelined or play a kind of a peripheral role. No, they don't play a peripheral role. They actually play a central role, right? So Mary giving birth and safeguarding her child, and Mary Magdalene witnessing his ascension. And here you have two women safeguarding.
Yes, yes, and absolutely. And actually, it was the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, about the four women who are foremost and of beautiful example of nobility for us.
Yeah.
That was really the seed for this book. Mentions first Mary,
Mm-hmm. She's
and
the highest, the
as the
most
one
pure,
who will enter paradise,
Mhm.
before his own daughter,
Right,
that he
right,
recognizes Mary
right.
as, the supreme example of purity and devotion.
So now we get to the death and the resurrection, but I'm trying to understand the intense suffering that she might have gone through in witnessing the crucifixion, though we believe that the crucifixion was made to look like he was crucified. I wonder if she knew that, and were there other women witnessing this with them?
We have pieces of traditions as to what unfolded, and that sense of betrayal by someone near, which then led to the persecution, which some say led to the crucifixion. And it's said that Mary and those women close were near, whereas the men were not. So there are all of these stories that we have, and
The men escaped because they were afraid for
this is
their
the
lives, right?
persecution. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
because the
yeah.
Romans were now really cracking down. And
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
But there are these stories from the different traditions as to what might have taken place.
Mhm.
Yet, in any case, there is that sense that the soul goes through a deep suffering in order to then be resurrected to new life. It's an example for us to take to heart, to recognize that every soul is going to journey through difficulty, and
Mm,
sometimes very intense difficulty. For a mother to lose a son in that way and yet trust in her Lord that
mm,
this life will be returned and
mm,
illuminate the world. Uh,
mm. Yeah. Yeah. And in some way, the significance of crucifixion, all of us, we always say, oh, I got crucified, right? We can have a renewal and be born into something, the fullness of our own being, of what we're supposed to be.
Absolutely. And that's such a beautiful saying of the Prophet Muhammad, to die before you die. And
Mm.
the sense that we sometimes are given these travails, in order to let go and trust more deeply.
Jesus's mission only lasted 3 years, but what a mission, right? I tell people half of the world population adores him and reveres him. Between Muslims and Christians, it's more than half the world's population. And so Mary traveled with the apostles at this point. She's traveling with John to spread the gospel. What was her role in the formation of Christianity as we understand it now? What was Apostle John's role in, you mentioned in your book that he builds this beautiful home for her, and that is
Mhm.
maybe her resting place? So if we could just,
After his passing, it is said that she journeyed with John, that he took her as a mother for him and she as a son.
John is the half brother of Jesus. John is Joseph's son.
And so they're journeying together, and passing through some of the Holy Land. And then it's said that they came to Ephesus, which would have been at the time second to Rome in importance.
Mhm.
He made a little house for her in the hills so that she could still be somewhat in retreat there. People would come to visit her there. Again, there's a spring, and
Mhm.
beautifully, one can still visit this place.
You mean there's
In-
spring water still there?
yes,
Like Zamzam water.
yes, exactly,
These are
exactly.
divine springs, they don't go away.
No, they keep flowing and keep bestowing healing water. And
Mm.
just as Zamzam, many people go to visit
Mhm.
Mary's house in what is now Turkey. Both Muslim and Christians go and immerse there in prayer and take some of the water that's still flowing as blessing.
Do we know anything about the circumstances of her death? There a tomb?
There are mysteries, and different places claim her, but the predominant now is that she resided in Ephesus during her last years, and
Mhm.
there's a tradition of a tomb, being empty and just pieces of her clothing, her blessed clothing, being left.
So like Jesus,
Yeah,
exactly like Jesus. So
being
she
raised
ascended. So
to
she
the heaven.
ascended to heaven. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I want to delve a little bit into the cultural and the spiritual connections to uncover this powerful reminder of the unity that Mary inspires in this divided world today. There are apparitions everywhere, right? But there are so many places that people say she was spotted, which unify many faiths.
Yes, it's such a beautiful moment. And often it's to very simple people that Mary appears, often to children. And in this case, it was three children in the hills of Portugal, in the town of Fatima, which was named for the daughter of Prophet Muhammad from the time, of the Muslims being in Portugal and Spain, Andalusia, and the beautiful merging then of cultures. And so Mary appears to these children in the heavens, and it's uh, just such beautiful moments of her uh, sharing prayers for peace and being this brilliant light. And when people in the extended community heard about it, at first they were, dubious, but other people went, and then um, she appeared a number of times, and it came to be, many, many people who came to witness and saw the sun spinning, and it had rained, and then their clothes were dry, and, just all kinds. Yes, but it's so beautiful, as you say, this interweaving of traditions,
Yeah,
and that she would appear at Fatima and weave together the presences of Mariam and
mhm.
Fatima, these
Is
beings of
that
luminosity,
yeah?
of
Is that where we get the amulet, the hand of Fatima from also?
it's such a lovely reflection that we have this hand of blessing in
Hand of Fatima,
all,
yeah,
all three traditions,
yeah.
both for Miriam in the Jewish tradition, Mary in the Christian,
Mhm.
and Fatima in the Islamic tradition. And that, that hand of blessing
Mhm.
and protection. And
Mhm. Yeah,
you know,
another thing that we always see with Mary is that image of the Madonna and the
mm,
child. And this is an enduring symbol all over the place. And I know when I went to this, there's this 10th century mosaic depicting this beautiful sacred bond in Hagia Sophia, which is, of course, in Istanbul,
yeah,
which is also a testament to the multi-faith history. I remember when I went there was the first time I saw that. I was stunned. That image is still very much in my mind with that beautiful gold and her smiling face holding this infant.
yes.
So
So
anything you
beautiful.
want to add to that?
It is a beautiful space, for holy wisdom. And Mary in that representation is the Madonna of wisdom. And sometimes she's the Madonna of tenderness. And, there are different aspects of the icon portrayals. But it says, wisdom shines without dimming. All who love her see her. All who desire her embrace her.
I know that I've always heard the term Hail Mary, like in football, you know? And, but is it connected to Mary herself? Yeah.
There is that verse of Hail Mary, full of grace,
Mhm.
the sense that in remembering her, also in the Quran, it says Zikr Maryam, it's this word zikr. It's not just remember or mention in verbal terms, but bring within yourself this,
Remember her.
yeah,
Remember her, which is what we're doing.
be with her. Yes, be with her.
Yeah.
And feel that illumination within ourselves. So
Yeah.
Hail Mary, the greeting to Mary is to be in that remembrance.
Mary has defended us in times of opposition and has also been shared in times of peace. Of course, I feel that this is the time of opposition. And the Quran mentions the story of Mary and or how early Muslims were saved.
That is such a lovely story. Even as, Mary and Joseph had fled from
Right.
persecution to Egypt, some of the early Muslims fled Mecca because of the persecution there and had gone to seek refuge in Abyssinia with the ruler there, the Negus. And um, some of the Meccans went after them to try
Yeah.
to bring them back for reckoning. And the ruler said, I'm not going to relinquish them until, I question them, to
Mhm.
understand better, because they've sought refuge with me. And he was a righteous Christian
Mhm. Yeah, it was a
ruler.
righteous Christian man, right?
Yeah. And so he called Jafar to come, who was the leader of that group, who were very devoted
Mm.
Muslims. So Jafar speaks, and what he speaks to the Negus is part of the Surah Maryam.
Mm.
And within it, that sense of Jesus as holy, Mary as holy, and this unfolding again of truth. And so the Negus draws a line in the sand and he says, the difference between us and you is less than this line in the sand. I will not give you up. You're welcome to stay and be in refuge here.
Wow. Imagine if we could just practice that today in much of the world where we see so much strife.
Yes.
So we have unfortunately come to this conclusion time. But I remember when I was young and oblivious, I used to sing Let It Be at the top of my lungs with the car roof open.
Yes.
The Beatles song, Let
Yes.
It Be, Let
Yes.
It Be. Never imagining that years later, Camille, I'd be here reflecting on the wisdom of Mary, her strength, her grace, her ability to let it be. And as the song beautifully says, Mother Mary comes to me speaking words of wisdom, let it be. It is no wonder that God honors her as the best of all humankind.
Mary really is such a foremost example of one of deep spirit who so deeply surrendered and was receptive to the guidance of her Lord.
Yeah.
We're one human family. All these stories, bind us together, and we're all hearts seeking.
Wow. On that note, the way of Mary Can this be purchased on Amazon or other bookstores everywhere? I don't know how to thank you for writing this beautiful book and for bringing Mary into this life, teaching us what sincerity really means, what virtue is, what submission is, and what resilience is. I hope and your lives have been enriched. And of course, it's Christmas, and Christmas is the time when Mary gave birth. So to all mothers out there who are birthers, may you be blessed and may you have a blessed Christmas. Camille, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today.
Thank you, dear one.
Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you, and definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter, and your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.